Hey everyone, Ekman here with another video, and today we're going to look at some OP10 deck lists that I've been working on for the One Piece card game. I know this is a little bit earlier compared to other formats for One Piece to be, so far ahead, since OP10 doesn't come out for at least a month as of this recording and release of this video, but I did want to kind of go over the OP10 section that I've launched on my website, Eggman Events. So not only do I have my own deck list here, but I've also been able to implement a table with some of the larger events that have happened across Asia as well. So you guys can check that out. The whole section's been launched. Obviously, we don't have any English events right now, but I do just kind of want to go over the section. I know a lot of people have been testing on the sim with OP10 finally released on that too, so I want to have just some example deck lists for you as well. Lastly, if you guys do have any deck lists you want on the table that have been doing well in Japan, that are Asia, and that you've seen that you want on the page too, I do have a form. You just have to click this button right here on this I suppose, and you can that will be added to the table. I'm going to be on my eyes for more of this too. Generally, I just kind of look at like the big pictures, but if I see more events and more deck lists for this, I'll be adding it for this one, and also for the OP09 section for some smaller events and just kind of some more unique deck lists that I've been seeing do well in the OP09 format. So if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. We make a lot of One Piece content, and we're going to continue to update Eggman events with that too. So these are just my first draft of all these deck lists as well, and I'm going to be continuing to add revisions to this table, as well as some teammates deck lists, as well as some older leaders that got some support from OP10 as well. So lastly, before we jump into it, I do want to just kind of do a quick tier list overview. This is just my kind of surface level opinions on these leaders as we have them. So I think the immediately playable leaders are going to be the green and purple Luffy. I'm so used to saying red and purple Luffy. The green and purple Luffy that we get out of EB02. I think the Ussop leader is very strong. I think moderately playable, we have both of the yellow supernovas with Kid and Trafalgar Law. There should be like a little maybe asterisk because it depends on if we get this promo and when we get a promo for that deck, but I think it's still pretty good. Potentially playable are the Smoker and the Sugar. And then lastly, we have the likely unplayable. These are my least two favorites. They're not completely unplayable, but I just haven't found any good builds for them. It's the ST21 Luffy and the Caeser Clown as well. So this also kind of shows what my kind of confidence for what these deck lists kind of look like right now too, as of this. And again, if I'm going to continue to update this, we're going to have better deck lists as we go on, but these are just kind of my first pass with them as well. So let's just jump on into it though with our first one, which is Smoker, which honestly, I didn't think I was going to like this leader as much as I did, but I had a whole lot of fun playing this deck. It's pretty good at one of my favorite games, like kind of mini games in the One Piece card game, which is Defend the 8-drop Kid. The fact that this card is really good against a lot of decks is fantastic, but we also have this new Tashigi card. So if you have a green character other than Tashigi that would be removed from your field by opponent's effect, you may rest this character instead. So being able to use this to prevent like them, bottom jacking, removing this from anywhere on the board is really, really strong. But then additionally, we have our Smoker effect that, gives plus 1k power, which is really handy for our additional like blockers that we have in this deck. And there's just like a lot of cool synergies with this. We obviously still play Rosinante, which is also Navy. So not that it makes a big difference, but we do get the buff for that too. We have Luffy, which is a blocker that can play 4 Straw Hat crews, which include this Tony Chopper, which this card's like low-key busted. Being able to be a 7k blocker, that's also just a 4 cost, that's also just a 2k. There's a lot of good synergies with this card with the deck. And then obviously we have the kind of super rare for it. It's the Smoker, so it has Banish, but also activate main set up to one of your Dawn cards is active, and then you can set your Dawn active through Smoker leader effect or character's effects for the rest of the turn. So you can't just like use the effects to keep using the activate main for it. So but since it's a 7k, if you have a character with 7k power or more, you get to set 2 Dawn as active, which is really strong. That also means if we have like 1 Dawn on this Sanji, it becomes a 7k, which means we get 2 additional Dawn active too, which is cool. And in general, there's a lot of cool little combos. There's a lot of good removal. This deck ends up being pretty defensive and kind of hard to get rid of late game. And the fact that like we get to make these really just big blockers that are hard to handle, I think it's a really fun deck, and I have a lot of fun with it too. So I don't think this is the only way to play it, but I do prefer having like the 8-drop Kid be like our defense tool. Some people just kind of put 4 copies of Zoro and just kind of go with it, which I don't think is wrong, but definitely not the play that I use for it. But also, this is not all the OP10 decks are just with OP10 cards. These can be boosted with EB02 cards as well. Like there's like the Nami that can search out Straw Hats, which you would likely play for this build as well, but I'm just not playing it in this one right now. I know a lot of people are just doing OP10 first, and then we'll be doing EB02 later, so I'll update most of these with EB02 once we get closer to that set coming out, but all these outside of the green and purple Luffy will be using OP10 cards only. So anyways, that's it for Smoker, and that's the build here. So next up we got Caeser Clown. This is likely the worst deck for this one. I don't see a lot of people playing this leader, and it's just kind of like a little bit clunky. If I was playing something that was red and blue, I'd likely be playing Marco, but it has a cool little effect, right? Dawn ×2, when attacking, you may return one of your punk hazard types with a cost of 2 or more to its owner's hand, and then you get to KO one of your opponent's characters at the cost of 4k or less. So the best card for the deck is this Monet, right? Activate main, you can rest this character, give up to 2 rested Dawn to your leader or one of your characters, then give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 10k or 1k during this turn. This is just the best card in the deck, like hands down. Like the fact that you can use this effect to put 2 Dawn, and then you can use it to get rid of a 5k with, like, it's so good that you need to see this card. If you do not see this card, you likely will be losing your game. Like it's just upsetting how important this card really is. So we kind of revolve around these 2 costs. Maybe I'm kind of too much in the engine. You know, I like the card Emporio Ivankov. So you being able to play a 2 cost from the top of our deck is pretty good. The fact that we get to draw is really good too. So it just helps us find our Monet. Obviously we have 4 Virgos and 4 Monet to be able to find it a little bit more consistently, and then just a good amount of 2 drops as well to help fill the curve. So I won't say this deck is amazing. We also do have like the top end of like the Caeser Clown being able to play out a Smiley, and then we can have the Smiley effect give something minus 3k, so then this can get rid of a 7k by itself, which is strong. We still need to have like the 2 Dawn underneath it, but that's fine. And then also we have the Silvers, which this card's really good. This card's really good with our leader, since, you know, we can use it to give a minus 3k and a minus 2k, so then we can also get rid of a 7k with the effect, which I think is nice. And we can, it's like our best combo for 10 Dawn, right? 10 Dawn, put 2 underneath Caeser Clown, 1 on Silvers, and then, you know, if we have Monet, we can use it to extend into an 8 cost, which is kind of nice. So I think that's all good. I think this deck can have some cool little combos. I think Marco is so just better and, you know, more generic than what this has to do, but it's fine. If you guys have a deck list for Caeser Clown that you like, I would love to see it. I just haven't found a lot of builds that kind of work for me. So this is the one that I have right now. Next up, we've got Sugar, and you guys know that I like the red and purple color combination. I've been playing a lot of red purple Luffy lately, and this deck is like really, really interesting. I think there's a lot of potential for a deck like this one, and I've been kind of working on it in my own way. This one's just okay for what it needs to do. Like the idea that we want to play this 9-drop Luffy on curve every turn is impactful. The fact that this Sugar, I misread this the first time I saw it, and I kind of learned the hard way how the deck works. But opponent's turn once per turn, when you activate an event, set up to 1 of your Dawn from your Dawn deck is active. So when I first read this, I thought like you just untap a Dawn. No, this lets you ramp a Dawn active if you're, you know, on your opponent's turn. So that's really important. I think that this also puts it to a way that if your opponent can kind of determine that one attack is not as good as like letting me ramp, I think people will play around it, kind of like how they play around pudding sometimes by not putting you down to 3 life. But being able to ramp with an effect like this is really strong. And then also we get to set one of our Dawn as active, so that's helpful too. Because of that, we do have like our Searcher for 1, we do have cards like Radical Beam for 1, and then we also have Little Black Bears, which lets us get a plus 4k, and then also you know, if we have 7 or more Dawn and 5 or less cards, we get to draw a card. So it's kind of like a worse Gum Giant, but it's what we can do for this deck. So it's fine for what it is. And then we do kind of have our combo of like, we have 8-drop Dofi, so Dawn -1, you get to play a 5 cost or less from your hand, that's Don Quixote Pirates, and then opponents attack you, you can rest one of your Dawn to ramp a Dawn is active. So that's pretty fine, just getting that additional ramp. And we have this Don Quixote Rosinante of you can trash a card from your event from your hand. If you do, you draw 2, and if you have 7 or more Dawn, you get to draw 2 or set 2 Dawn active. So it works really well with this Don Quixote do Flamingo. And then lastly, Senior Pink. It's kind of like the worst of the two, but the fact that you do get to Dawn -1, you know, add up to 1 purple card with 5 or less, and then you get to set one of your Dawn as active. So You don't get to ramp one. This is like me again reading comprehension, right? You don't ramp the Dawn as active. You just get the Dawn as active, so that does make a difference in some scenarios. But again, both these are just kind of good off of 5. So only thing I'll say is that sometimes like the late game is not there, but like if you get the combo, which should be pretty easy with like your sugar and with your 1-drop event searcher, you can get a good amount of ramp and see these combos pretty quickly. But it's a really interesting deck that I feel like it could be pretty open-ended for different packages as well. So this is just kind of the safer one. I think there's some other builds that exist for sure, and this would probably be the one that I think the most amount of time once I do like my proper OP10 testing. And once I stop doing OP09 testing. So this is a build for sugar, and I'm looking forward to different builds of this in the future as well. And then next up, we've got Trafalgar Law, and I know a lot of people are jumping onto this deck, and something to mention, and I'll mention it when we get to the kids section. One card is kind of more important than the other, and it's this 4-drop Law, which currently we don't know how and when we're getting this card. There's a good amount of promos that Japan gets that we don't get at all. About 5 or 6 right now, I think, by tally. It might be even a little bit more, but I can definitely think of 5 that we don't have. And if we don't get this Trafalgar Law, it's a big shame. Mostly because like it's a pretty like bare bones card, right? It's just a 2k counter that ends up being a supernova, which is important, but also the fact that if our leader has supernova and we have 5 or less between the two of us, we get to play the card for free. So I do think Kid cares about this card a little bit more than Trafalgar Law, but it is something that we do appreciate having access to this card in this deck. So Trafalgar Law, kind of like the Virgo, or not the Virgo, the what was it, the Smoker. It is a pretty good deck for playing the defend the 8-drop Kid play. There's a lot of good ways to be able to play this out, and for mostly for this deck we have a lot of blockers, which is really nice, but also we have like this 7-drop Trafalgar Law, which I think is, I mean, obviously it's built for this deck, but man, this card is good. So being able to put a supernova face up and then add a Dawn to our leader, it means that we can use our leader effect, that the total cost of your characters is 5 or more. You can return 1 character to your hand, reveal the top card of your life. If that card is a supernova, you get to play it. If it costs 5 or less. So we can do some fun things where we put a card into our life, like Cavendish, and then we return it with Law, and then we get to play out the Law, or the Cavendish from the Law. Like, there's a lot of cool little combos that you get to do. And top of that too, like if we go down to 0 life, we have a lot of cards in hand. Kid is really great for being able to, we play the effect, we do it, we play out one of our blockers, which can include the Scratch Mana Poo, which can include the Beige as well. And then we use like one of the other 1-drops, and then we can play out like a Trafalgar Law 5-drop. Like there's a lot of good sequencing that we can do to be able to end the turn with like 2 blockers up and Eustass Kid, and your opponent can't really do a lot about it either. So it's a deck that takes a lot to learn how you play it correctly. It's something that I do think it might be like a little bit clunky to be consistent all the time, but I have a lot of fun playing this deck, and I know a lot of people are definitely interested in doing some testing with this. And again, like I really appreciate every time they make a Trafalgar Law leader, it's really complex and kind of is like, bouncing cards back and forth. And there's a reason like why people like this leader and the decks that are around it, because of just kind of that theming for it. So there's a lot of other builds, but I do like the current build I have here for the green and yellow Trafalgar Law. Next up, we got Ussop, which, it's another blue and black leader, which we haven't had in a while, and the last one got banned. So if that shows like the potential power combination of blue and black. So I think like blue has like some of the best removal in the game, and black has cost reduction, which means that obviously like stuff like Hound Blaze would be around. But honestly, like we still just kind of stay inside our own little Dressrosa package, which I think is really cool. The one thing about Ussop is that it's just really good at drawing cards and getting cycle. Opponent's turn once returned, this effect may be activated when one of your Dressrosa type characters are removed from your field by opponent's effect or are KO'd. If you have 5 or less cards in your hand, you get to draw 1. So honestly, like this effect kind of leans more on like the blue side instead of the black side. And then also all of our characters get +1 cost if they're Dressrosa, which is really nice too. So what that kind of lets us do is give some protection for some of our cards, which is nice. The fact that, they're +1 cost comes up, I think, quite a bit. We do have some good removal. Like the best kind of play we have is this Rebecca here. So on play, if there's a character with a cost of 8 or more, which means that our Ussop gives the +2, we get to draw a card, then reveal up to 2 Dressrosa type characters with cost of 7, and other than Rebecca, then 1 that's 4, and you play it rested. So you can do something like you can play the Kyros, or you can play out the Monkey D Luffy, and you can have the Coliseum, so it can attack the turn it's played into something that's active, which is really nice. This being able to bomb deck a 5 or lower is great in most spots. And then also if you play out Zoro, you can rest like the Dressrosa leader or stage to KO like a 4 or lower, and then put 2 in your track. Like, all of that's really, really good. So one card that I don't like, that I know a lot of people that like, is the Cavendish. The fact that, you know, when attacking, you get to draw 2 and trash 1 from your hand. My biggest issue with this card is that, like, it's a little bit trickier to get like a lot of value from it, because you have to play it rested if you play it off the Rebecca effect, and then like most people kind of answer it. I do like playing like the Sabo 5-drop in the fact that we do get some like defense from it. We get the draw 2 guaranteed, which on like 5 or 7 Dawn, 5 or 6 Dawn, sometimes this is just a better play than playing out the Cavendish. So I like the idea for it. You'll notice that, like, even though we draw a lot of cards, we do have a good amount of bricks in our hand with 18, especially since we do kind of have to play 4 copies of this Coliseum. We do need to see it pretty early, but we do have a lot of searches with it, with the Rebecca as well as the Leo, so that is pretty strong for the deck as well. But we do definitely want to see it and play it if we can. So last card is, I do have like a swag copy of the 6-drop Secret Rare Luffy. Once per turn, this character cannot be KO'd by your opponent's effect, so having the protection effect is nice. And then when attacking, you may place 3 cards from your trash to the bottom of your deck. If your opponent has 5 or more cards in their hand, they have to trash 1. So it's fine, right? It's a fine effect, especially since, like, I think we're going to have a good amount of like additional cards in our trash as well. It's obviously not as like strong as like our 7-cost Luffy, but it's something that you could play off of like your Rebecca if you don't see anything else. It does have the 1k counter, and I don't know if it's going to be better than like the Rebecca leader either. Like, anything with like the Coliseum is pretty nice. She immediately get that, you know, attack and draw. So I think the card is fine, but it's not my favorite for the deck either. So we're just having like a swag copy for it. But in general, I think Usopp's going to be very strong. It's going to be one of the better decks that come out of OP10. I don't think it's going to be like the best deck in the OP10 format necessarily, but I know a lot of people are on it, and it's going to be quite popular as well. So there it is. Next up, we got Kid, and honestly, I like this deck a lot more than I thought I would. It's really unique on kind of how it works and how it's like an aggressive deck, but it has like this defensive stuff. It has like some burn damage, but it's really, really interesting in a lot of ways. So, you know, end of your turn, you may turn the top card of your life face up. You can set one of your 3 to 8 cost characters with Supernova active, and then this gains blocker into the end of your opponent's turn. So because of that, I do think like this law you do feel when you don't have this card as much as compared to I think the other decks, right? Being able to just put it to the top of our life with the 7-drop law. Since we don't play anything off of our life, we can just set it up as either just a heal, or it's something that we can play out if they hit into our life more consistently. So that does feel a little bit bad in comparison. 8-drop Kid is a pretty silly card if you're able to get it working, right? On play, you can rest this character, trash up to 1 card from the top of your opponent's life cards, and then also you get to draw 1, trash 1, and then also you can set it active with the Kid effect. So all of that's really good, and I think that's really handy for what the deck is. 10-drop Ace might be like a trap card, but it does heal and lets us be a little bit more aggressive. So I think 2 copies is fine for what it is, and we do have like the rest of like the Supernova package, right? So clearly, like, Basil Hawkins is really good in the fact that we can kind of force our opponent to go, you know, life for us, which is really good. The fact that this Cavendish, even though like it's a vanilla, it turns into a 6/8 blocker in this deck, which isn't terrible. So I like adding it to the deck too, and then the rest of the deck as well. So honestly, it's crazy how good this like 1-drop Luffy is in a lot of situations. We only can put blockers on something that costs 3 to 8, so we can't like make this Luffy, which is probably for the best. If we could just get like a free 1-drop blocker off of this deck, I think that'd be pretty silly. But generally, we want our bigger cards to be the blockers anyways. So I think this deck is a lot of fun. I think it's something that gets a little bit worse as we get later into the format, but I also think that there's a way for you to have like a magic formula to really exceed and do a lot of damage. So again, we will miss the 4-drop law until we see it. I think you can play the deck without it. You can just play like the beige 2k if you want more 2ks in the deck, but I think this one will feel a little bit more than the law deck, just because like we have like these other 2Ks with like the X-Drake and the beige that are fine with it, but beige works like really well with law, and it only works like okay. I think with Kid, it kind of doesn't refresh it enough, so missing out on that additional 2K is a little bit rough for it, but there it is. And then going into the Star Deck 21, and then we're going to look at the EB02 Luffy real quick. We got the Monkey D Luffy, which I really want to like this leader, and maybe I'm just playing it wrong, maybe I'm building it wrong, but the effect is pretty neat. effect Dawn times 1 active main. Once per turn, give up to 2 of your rested Dawn to one of your characters. So the fact that it can't give it to itself is probably fair and balanced, but it does stink that you need to have something on the board to be able to give to the the Dawn to. So kind of the idea for this deck is to just kind of focus on a lot of our rush cards, being able to like immediately get value from there and get some neat kind of synergies with it. So mostly Straw Hat stuff, which shouldn't be too surprising. I think the key cards for this deck are the 4-drop Zoro, which if we play this on 5, we can make this be a 7k rush card, as well as make sure to give a Dawn to our leader to be able to give us the extra 2 Dawn. And then on K, you can play 1 red character with 5k base power or below other than Zoro from your hand. So I think there's like a lot of good cards for this effect, but the ones I felt like just blockers are just better. So we have the Tony Choppers, both the 3 cost as well as the 2 cost Sanji one from OP10. Both these, like, this becomes a 6k blocker, which is kind of nice because the OG power is less than 5, and then this also becomes a 4k blocker, but this also just has like a really good effect. So if they get rid of this, then you can put 2 Dawn onto it next turn with your leader effect, and then you can attack into something and give it the minus 3k, which is puts a lot of things into range, which I think is really strong. So especially if we have like I'm playing the 7 cost Newgate, which this might be bad. This I can admit it, right? But the fact that you play this character and you give your leader a Dawn means that you can then give 2 Dawn to something else, and then you can get some good effects. If you have something on the board, you get to go pretty wide while also being able to KO something with Newgate's effect, which I think is strong. Like especially like if let's say like we had the Chopper out. Let's say on 5 we did the Zoro play. They pop the Zoro, we play out the Chopper. Then we can do the thing where we play this on 7, play the Newgate, use the effect to give Dawn to Luffy, use the Luffy effect to give 2 Dawn to Chopper, attack, give something minus 3k, and then we can pop it with Newgate. That doesn't seem bad, right? Like, it's really specific. I'm not going to get, I'm not going to be like split hairs about it, but that has some like really good removal potential in my mind. So other than that, we do have like ways to give stuff like minus 1k power with like this Dalton, which this also helps us get cards into our hand, which is like my biggest fear in this deck. But being able to, like, if we play this on 6, we can play it, give something minus 1k, use our leader effect to give our leader 1k, and then this 2, and then activate main. Once per turn, you can add 1 card from the top of your life to your hand. This gains rush, so you get that like an 8k from this, and also give something the minus 1, which is fine. So other than that, like we have this Luffy, which might be bad, but again, being able to give this 2 Dawn is really easy. So we can make this a 9k rush on 7. So it's kind of like a mini copy of Dragon. Dragon obviously is super strong, right? You use the effect to give 2 Dawn to Luffy, and then use Luffy's effect to make Dragon an 11k. So like you have a 7k and 11k going in. That's really, really good value for where it's at. And then I know that we can't give Dawn when we have this Shanks out, but Shanks is just like a really good late game rush card to help us get some power. So I don't know how I feel about this. It's just a pile of cards. I'm not going to deny it, but I think there is some potential for it. Dragon might just be the better leader with all these effects too, so there is some potential for that, but I think it's interesting, and here's the build for this one. And then lastly, we've got the green and purple Luffy, which I know a lot of people are excited for, and I am too. I really have been enjoying the purple Luffy. I maybe it's my security blanket, but like this card is just super strong. So any deck that can use it immediately catches my eye. So the purple and green Luffy, and also as of recording, this is where we don't have the translated cards, but this should be updated pretty shortly. So even as soon as this video comes out, we should have like the full translated cards for all of these. But until then, this Monkey D. Luffy, in case you don't know, activate main once return, Dawn -2. If the only characters on your field are Straw Hat crew type, set up to 2 of your Dawn is active, and then this character, this leader gets plus 1k power until the end of your opponent's turn. So you don't get 2 Dawn active, you just get to reset 2 of your Dawn, which is a big difference obviously, but being able to have that 2 open is really nice. We have a lot of effects that are based on us losing those 2 Dawns, so we've got like the Going Merry. So if your leader has the Straw Hat crew type, draw 1 card, and when we play, then activate main. If you rest the stage, if the number of Dawn cards on your field is equal to or less than the number of your opponents, give it to one of your Straw Hat plus 2 costs until the end of your opponent's turn. So honestly, like, I think this card can be really good in purple and black Luffy, but we'll talk about that later. But being able to get that additional Dawn, or like the plus 2 cost to your characters, means that they're harder to remove, which is great because we're going to be losing Dawn pretty often, and it's just like a free cycle early game. We do also have like the effects of, I think it's the Sanji pudding. So when 2 or more Dawn are on your field or returned to your Dawn deck, you get to add 1 Dawn back as active. And then also on play, if the number of Dawn cards on your field is equal to or less than your opponent's, you get to draw 1. So being able to like, this is your turn once per turn, but being able to like mitigate the -2 you do every turn is good. Like this is going to be a 6k leader in your opponent's turn, and then also you're able to like be really aggressive with it. So on 5, if you play out the Sanji and Pudding, you're able to like Dawn -2, which means that you only lose 1 Dawn. So you have 4 Dawn, then you're able to have 2 additional Dawn open. So then you turn into an 8k on an offense, 6k on defense, and you're still doing pretty good. So other than that, we just kind of have standard purple Straw Hat cards, right? We do have like this new Nami that looks top 5 for any Straw Hat card that's no matter what color you have, which is great, other than Nami, and you add it to your hand. I've got 2 copies of Law since it finds most of our deck, but just not all of it. So, but it's, you know, as a backup Nami in that case. You've got 4-drop Zoro, which searches out most of this deck. This only searches purple cards, but guess what? The purple cards are the good cards, so we're fine, including like the Uso Hachi and the Zoro for some early ramp. And then our top end is like the 7-drop Sanji is like a finisher for us, as well as the Monkey D Luffy. So this is a secret rare format. If your leader is multicolored and your opponent has 5 or more Dawn on their field, this character gains Rush. And then also when attacking once return, you may return 2 of your active Dawn cards to your Dawn deck. Set this character as active, then add 1 card from the top of your life to your hand. So it has to be active Dawn. So, but it works with our leader effect, right? The fact that we get to you know, we lose the Dawn with this, and then we set them as active, and then we can use it to restand this. Is this kind of the idea for it, right? So it's not bad, it, you know, for the effect, and I think it's a good kind of boss monster for this deck too. So it's interesting. I think that this whole archetype is really neat, and I'm looking forward to doing some more testing with the green and purple Luffy in the next little bit too. So anyways, that's going to be it. It might be a little bit longer than I hoped, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, all these leaders are pretty fun in their own right. These are some pretty like surface level deck lists, which I'll be able to deep dive later in the format too. If you guys want like a more entailed guide for any of these leaders, please let me know. I'd love to do that in the future as well, but that's going to be it for me. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll catch you all next time.